Assalamualaikum guys. I will do chapter acid, bases and salt. Okay, this chapter name is acid, bases and salt. In this lecture, inshallah, we will cover that the definition of an acid, and we will also cover the properties of an acid and its reaction with metal, bases, and carbonates. Okay, so let's start. So, what's the definition of an acid? An acid is basically a substance which forms H positive ions in aqueous solution. Okay, a substance which forms H positive ions in aqueous solution. So you have to note this definition. Okay. So we are so what are the types of acid? There are two types of acid. Okay. There are two types of acid. One acid is known as strong acid, and the other is known as weak acid. Okay. So how can we identify a strong acid? A strong acid completely ionizes. Okay. A strong acid completely ionizes. So that's the definition of the strong acid. So a strong acid completely ionizes in water. Okay. Okay. So like when we so let's check HCl. So what does HCl do? When it is put in water, H2O, this H is completely removed. Okay, from Cl means that it is broken into H plus Cl. Okay. So that's what happens when a strong acid. What and how can you define a weak acid? A weak acid can be defined as that it does not complete it partially ionizes in water. Okay, so the definition of weak acid is it partially ionizes in water. Okay, that's the definition of a weak acid, and its example is ethanoic acid. Like if you can see its formula, ethanoic acid's formula, it is CH3OCOOH. Okay, right. So when ions so what happens in aqueous solution? It the one H the this H is broken down. Okay, so it's broken down, what happens? H is removed and CH3 and COO are left. So in this, the hydrogen is still left in the acid. Okay, so it means that it has partially ionized. Okay, so it has partially ionized. This is how a weak acid can be defined. Now, let's do the properties of an acid. So, what are the properties of an acid? So, the first property of an acid is that acid have a sour taste. Okay, properties of an acid. So, the first part is it has a sour taste. Okay, so and the second property of an acid is that acid dissolve in water to form solutions which conduct electricity. Okay, so acid dissolve in water to form solutions. You have to write these notes. I hope that you are noting. Okay, which conduct electricity. How do they conduct electricity? So that when it ionizes, ions are produced in the water, right? So when there are positive ions, positive, and so these ions are free to move. Hence, when the electricity is passed through them, it transfers the electricity by moving. Okay, so it transfers the electricity. That's how it conducts the electricity. Now, the third property of an acid is that acid turns blue litmus paper red. Okay, acid turns blue litmus paper red. Means that when a blue and the moist blue litmus paper is kept in an acid, it will turn red. And depending on its acidity, it will change its color. Okay. Okay. So the fourth property of an acid is that its pH is lower than 7. Okay. Its pH is lower than 7. Okay. And acid is that how strong acid is defined, that how much low its pH is. The lowest the pH, the lowest the pH, the reactive the acid is. Okay. So that's the fifth property of an acid. And the other property of an acid is that acid react with base to form what? To form salt and water. Okay. And this reaction is also known as neutralization. Okay. This reaction is also known as neutralization. So these are some of the properties of an acid. So now let's do the reaction with metals. Okay. So acid react with metal to form salt and hydrogen. Okay. Acid react with metal to form salt and hydrogen. Acid react with metal to form salt and hydrogen. So what does this statement mean? That let me draw its equation. An acid plus metal, what it forms? It forms a it forms salt and hydrogen gas. Okay. Okay. So let me give you an example. Like when magnesium means Mg reacts with dilute sulfuric acid. What dilute sulfuric acid? H2SO4. SO4, yes, SO4. Magnesium is solid. That's right. It's straight symbols. So what it forms? It forms magnesium sulfate plus hydrogen. Okay, magnesium sulfate plus hydrogen. So magnesium has two positive charge and sulfate has two negative charge. So they are both cancel out and they form MgSO4 plus H2. So now that's I think it's balanced. Yes, this equation has been no. Yeah, it is balanced. Okay. So now so that is how that is what happens when an acid reacts with metal. So when acid reacts with metal, a salt is formed, like in this reaction. When magnesium react with H2SO4 means dilute sulfuric acid. It's also an acid and this is metal. When they react, SO4 H2 is removed from SO4. So magnesium and SO4 are both made a compound. Okay. So this is a salt. A salt is produced and hydrogen is produced. Okay. So now let's do the reaction of acid with bases. So when acid react with a base, what happens? When acid react with a base. Okay, so what happens? We have done this, I think, in the properties. Okay. So when acid react with base, acid plus base, what happens? Salt and water is produced. Okay, and this is called as neutralization reaction. Okay, this is called as neutralization reaction. We are done with this acid, and now let's do what happens when acid react with carbonate. Okay, hydrogen carbonate. So when acid react with hydrogen carbonate or just carbonate, what happens that acid react with salt is produced. That's the common product. Okay, in every reaction, salt will be produced when an acid is included. Okay, so a salt will be produced H2O means water will be produced, and CO2 means carbon dioxide will be produced. Okay, that's what happens when an acid reacts with carbonate. Like let me write an example. Like when acid means, like let's take dilute hydrochloric acid. So let's take HCl. And carbonate, let's take calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate means CaCO3. Okay, and now let's take. So what will be the product? So calcium will react with HCl, and calcium carbonate will react with acid. So calcium HCl will be form a compound. Okay. So first let's write that what and carbon dioxide will be produced, right? Means H2O plus CO2 will be produced. So now let's write this salt. So in this one we remove H and CO. What's left? Ca and Cl, right? So first we always write metal in a in an equation, okay? We always write metal means calcium. Calcium will be written first, okay? And Cl two. How did this two came? Cl has two positive charge and Cl has my negative one. So one we don't usually write, and Cl2 will be formed. And this is a salt, okay? So that's all for today. Inshallah, we will cover other topics such as base in the next class, inshallah. And inshallah, so stay tuned, guys. Hope you like the lecture. So please do subscribe and stay tuned for the next part. Inshallah, in the next part, we will cover base and also we will try to cover alkalis also. Bases, like, of course, alkali and base are not the same, okay? Like, of course, some students have a misconception that alkali and bases are the same, but they are not, because an alkali is a substance that produces hydrogen ions in aqueous solution, uh, but an alkali is a base that is water soluble, okay? That base, which is water soluble, is known as alkali. Hence, there's a big difference in alkali and a base. Hope you guys like this lecture. So stay tuned for the next lecture, and inshallah it's soon uploaded. So and do like, share, and subscribe. Okay, bye guys.